Welcome to Cisco Live.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Booth. My name is Brian Felt and I'll be your host today. We are coming at you from Cisco Live in Las Vegas, Nevada. Certainly one of the top shows on everybody's calendar each and every year. This year, no different. I'm super thrilled to be joined by two wonderful guests. We have David Jensen. He's a distinguished solutions engineer at Cisco. And Justin Van Schaik. Justin is a technical solutions architect at Worldwide Technology. To the two of you, thank you so much for taking the time out of a busy schedule to join.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Well, I want to get into some of the news and headlines coming out of this show, Cisco Live in particular. But first, I just wanted to get into, there's so much hype going on in the market right now as it relates to AI. You know, certainly some of it hype, some of it inching into reality. And that's one of the things that our clients struggle with the most is just how to make sense of it and how to actually move it forward. So it's an open-ended question, but you know, how can they start to think about hype versus reality as it relates to AI, and what can they do to move that forward? David, we'll start with you.
Yeah, hey, thank you, Brian. So if you take a step back and you went to like, where have we been on this journey, right? So you start with virtualization, then you transition to cloud, and now we got this AI thing. Gen AI is a lot of hype. You can't have a conversation with a customer without talking about Gen AI, whether it's Gen AI embedded into your products or customers building out their own training and inferencing and RAG type use cases. I think customers are really starting to, like lines of businesses and CEOs, like where do they get started on this whole journey and sort of bring use cases to reality and sort of take the hype out of it, but bring it back to a practical business sense or an outcome-based solution set.
Yeah, I mean, up to this point, it's basically been, I want to buy an AI, maybe I'll buy two of them, you know, and it's throw hardware at the problem in massive amounts without even understanding the problem. And what I've been noticing that's really been a positive trend here is that customers are starting to ask the right questions. Part of that is we're starting to actually see the gaps in the technology ourselves, intuitively. Like, you know, we have the InfiniBand versus Ethernet conversation, it's an ongoing one, but we see where the gaps are specifically in Ethernet around reactive quality of service instead of being a little more, you know, proactive about it and you know, bad load balancing and things. When Meta trained up Llama 2 last year, they had 2,000 GPUs running on Ethernet and it worked great. They had to change Ethernet. They'd done 24,000 GPUs for Llama 3. Ethernet worked just as well. Same problem. Now we're starting to build that technology into it so that functionally what we know, the best practices we've built, we can start to leverage. And what I tell my customers is AI at the end of the day is just another application. It's Skynet.exe. And is it complex? Yeah, and once you get inside of it, that's a monster. But realistically, it's still the same compute, storage, network, middleware solutions, software stacked on top to support the whole mess. Once we define that, we can support it properly. And that mystique is starting to kind of wear off when we get the real work done.
Well, it's great to hear that clients are asking some of the right questions and starting to make some progress. Let's relate that to some of what's happening here at Cisco Live. Certainly lots of great announcements from Cisco and others, but talk about some of the announcements Cisco's made today or the last week and how that is going to help our clients, you know, meaningfully push forward AI.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. So if you listen to the announcements yesterday, one of the biggest announcements from Jonathan Davidson yesterday was Cisco HyperFabric, right? If you look at HyperFabric, it's a SaaS-based controller in this true sense. So customers consume an outcome-based approach. If you start with a VXLAN EVPN fabric, that would be a good starting point. I truly believe like building things out into a colo, it's a true lights out management data center. So having a SaaS controller, having the ability to do a bill of materials, optics, cable links, where ports go, laying down the underlay and have a true outcome service is what customers are after. It's not about the hardware software stack anymore, it's about the outcome. It's about day zero, day one, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna evolve that for HyperFabric AI. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna have the same SaaS controller, network, software, and a management layer to reach into the servers to have visibility into like DPUs and GPUs, help with the provisioning, as well as the telemetry that's coming from all of these different servers and interfaces reaching in further into the server.
That's also been a question that's been going around as we were discussing this amongst ourselves before, is the telemetry is kind of a bit of a devil. Because especially we're talking a cloud-based solution where that controller is not necessarily local to the fabric being managed. A lot of the decisions you need to make in AI are real time. They're tactical. It's modifying PFC, ECN, DCQCN values on the fly, which is what InfiniBand does with the subnet manager. So there also has to be a need to bring some level of localized decision making, whether that's a subnet manager container for Ethernet that's spun up on site, on one of the switches, or a separate dedicated appliance. These are the things that also become very apparent as we're talking about these great solutions. Those gaps are like, it doesn't take weeks or months for people to say, hey, what about the general understanding of the technology is good enough that we're like, we got to figure that out right now. This is one those are the questions that we're asking right off the bat. So that's
100%. So if I can just take a step, so we've innovated to solve for that problem. So we're building out assertion-based visibility, assertion-based telemetry. Why is that important? This is game-changing to where we know what normal is, meaning it's a push versus pull model, right? So we know what normal is, meaning that we're going to reduce the false positives. And if we look at like the number of BGP routes in an overlay, or what is normal for host-based attachment, we'll alarm based upon something outside of that threshold to align to that real-time alerting and visibility for these AI workloads.
So it's almost a small inferential AI that's been trained up to manage the network,
That's correct.
living within the AI, training the other AI.
That's exactly correct.
That's getting interesting.
Yes. And if I could just add one more piece. If you look at the SaaS controller, customers don't want to manage all of the on-prem traditional stacks, right? It's the lifecycle management of that. So if we can give you the network, like a spine leaf, for example, right? And if I can give you network plus compute plus storage, you heard also yesterday, we're partnering with VAST, right? So we'll have VAST with DPUs in there. We'll be able to automate the full stack. Network, compute, and storage is nothing new to Cisco, and it's nothing new to WWT. We're just expanding, Justin, to your point, the use cases to encompass this Gen AI hype and buzz that you alluded to earlier, Brian.
Yeah, and you mentioned being outcome focused. That's such a great message to hear. You're talking about use cases. I wonder if you could articulate a little about what some of those outcomes are, or maybe if you're seeing some tangible use cases taking place, in the market right now.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. Thank you, Brian. If you take a step back, Justin, sort of to your point, everybody compares themselves to do what the hyperscalers are doing. So you mentioned Meta and Azure, right? So everybody is asking the questions about, hey, I need an 8-way box. Well, you may not need an 8-way box. You may need 8 GPUs, right? Because if you have an 8-way box, then you're going to need a 9th one, and then what do you have to do? You have to build a network at that point, and that's where we come in to help with the outcome-based approach. So breaking the use cases down to large language model training, inferencing, like getting access to that actual data, or RAG. RAG is a form of an inferencing kind of model, or even RAFT, which is like the T stands for like the fine tuning of like a Llama 3 model. So I think you need to take a step back and break the problem set down. At the end of the day, you're going to have to build out a network. And today, from a Cisco WWT perspective, it's going to be on an Ethernet-based fabric. Anything else to add to that?
I love Ethernet. Ethernet's awesome. The truth is, again, like InfiniBand will always have a niche, especially on that top 1% to 2%. Or I say, like, if you're trying to pattern your enterprise on what the hyperscalers do, you probably need to rethink your strategy. They have a very specific skill set, and it works well for them. 98% of the environments that we're going to be deploying, especially over the next 12 to 18 months, are going to start to be much more Ethernet-based. Again, as we start to see those gaps and see how to fix them. Also understanding that InfiniBand is optimized for a single workload type, and the past year, people I'll buy two whole AIs, and they're very simple workloads, very simple. We have to get something out there. We're going to see our enterprise customers start to have 20, 30, 40 different use cases, all active AIs being in different stages of training and inference, and that means very diversified workloads. That is what Ethernet handles well. And what we've seen in tests, when we've done proof of concept, we've seen that InfiniBand does start to taper off in performance as you start to add into the complexity of the environment. So I personally think we're going to go into a unified I/O over the next couple of years. We're not going to have as differentiated InfiniBand and storage network. It's all going to fly. We can segment that pretty easily, and we have the practices down. We just have to overcome the fear factor. And then we can get into real latencies and speeds and, a side note, which is relative to this, finally gotten to the point where I can stop having the conversation every day about which one should we do, Ethernet or InfiniBand. No, now the conversation is becoming, how do we optimize Ethernet? How do we build Ethernet better? Not to say we're tossing InfiniBand by the side, but realistically, it's now a question of doing the job better instead of the either or binary gateway, which is 40 conversations a day and takes a long time.
Well, you mentioned just the varied sizes of workloads and the different use cases. It's all kind of a little bit of a learning on the fly type of thing, and it requires options. It requires an ecosystem, and I know that's something that we've talked about before. Just having options in terms of you mentioned 8-way box or GPU. Like, how important is it to understand that AI is not like a one size model fits all, and how can we help?
Well, so in the early days, again, like all of a year ago, pretty much, it was very easy. Just buy, there was one major provider, one major solution, one major option. That was great. Now we have all these new entrants into it, all these new alliances forming. So we start with a fundamental grasp of the technology. We're building that. We're teaching that. We're socializing that. After that, yes, when you're looking to build out a large AI investment, that's going to be $30, $50, $100 million. You need to test that. So at Worldwide Technology, we've been building out the AI proving grounds over the last year, which incorporates as many of those variables as possible into a composable infrastructure. So that if you want to see how VAST works over Cisco with Dell Compute, or if you want to see how Arista features in there, which one's better to your needs, we can compare all of those and give the customer the freedom to choose before they invest. They haven't been able to do that yet.
Yeah, David, maybe touch a little bit on that, the ability to have that type of flexibility, and maybe how Cisco views the AI proving ground and what we expect out of the future.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. So if you look at the work we've been doing, like partnering together, Cisco and WWT, we've invested in the AI proving grounds, right? So when you guys bring customers through, we're putting our Cisco validated designs into your proving grounds, to where we have network, compute, storage from FlexPod, and Pure, soon to be VAST, like the NVIDIA AI stuff that we announced, like Cisco NVIDIA stuff that we announced yesterday. But if you look at what we're doing now, is we're giving you the full stack to where customers can consume this today. And what we're also doing is we have an AI toolkit. And what we're enabling is the toolkit says, hey, I can go ahead and deploy, so I can do, remember I mentioned the management layer, so I can take Cisco Intersight that's available today, I can lay down the operating system, I can lay down NVAIE and NIMS, or I can choose a different model to do that. There's complexity in time to get all the different libraries, all the different versions, Ubuntu, like all of that stuff needs to be, and then all the applications sitting on top of that, right? We lay that down in minutes. Now we give a customers a starting point to do like a RAG type demo. What is RAG? It's a method that customers can load their own documents into that system, and now they can start. You can customize it to their line of business, to that vertical. I can give you many examples of how simple it is, and we just go ahead and load up the customer's documents, start asking questions based upon their business, whether it's training, security, policies, procedures, and it takes the conversation to the next level. So you bring in Cisco, WWT, a reference architecture, and simplifying the application laying on top to have an outcome-based solution set for our customers.
Yeah, to add on to that RAG demo, so we had Cisco demonstrate essentially that same thing. And it was very small infrastructure. We're going to take, for example, every marketing document that Starbucks has made over the last 5 years, and just a bunch of PDFs, and feed them into it. And you watch all the GPUs go for about 5 minutes, and then you ask a simple question like, what should I have to drink? And it'll say, I checked the weather, I see it's October, perhaps a pumpkin spice latte would work well for you right now. That's a level of that's a quick inference, but that's what we're talking about when we're talking about AI. And mind you, that specific demo is running on the smallest possible GPUs on general workhorse servers. Nothing special required to do it. Not requiring the massive investments that people are thinking they have to put into it. Right size it. Doesn't have to be huge. It has to be the right thing for what you need.
That's a good point, Justin. So if I can just take that one step further, you talk about the performance testing. I can't do that you did, but but if you look at performance testing, what we're able to do is we can take that model, that AI toolkit, we can start with like an inference on CPU. Like CPUs are very powerful today, right? Then we can move it to a single GPU, like we're doing an A100 in the ATC just as a test. We're enhancing that as we move forward. So we can take it to a multi-GPU in clustering, so GPU to GPU communication. Again, building out that Ethernet fabric, that Ethernet network. Do I need a back-end network? Do I need just a front-end network only? What capabilities do I need? So you can give them all the performance metrics for CPU to GPU to multi-GPU with the network and have them baseline and sort of right-size that thing to where they're not, have pallets of things just sitting on the docket not knowing what they're going to be doing with that.
Correct. Because one of the worst things about any large technical investment is when it doesn't deliver what you're asking for it. And we've seen that happen. There's been a lot of dissatisfaction in the market as well. We overbought for AI. Would you like to buy these back from us? No. That's a challenge that we hope to have our customers avoid.
1,000%. And if you take a step back, so just to talk a little about the UCS side of the house, right? So we talked about, hey, all we had available to us were these old GPUs, right? And now we got like H100s coming, and then you have the new HB200s coming, the whole Blackwell
and
stuff.
Gaudi 3s and
the whole stack, right? Yeah. So if you look at UCSX, so if you're on technology A, and technology B comes out, all you have to do is pull out the existing ones, put the new ones in, so we're doing investment protection, and what else happens? You don't have to move any cables, right? You mentioned unified I/O. This is like the unified fabric again for AI workloads. Thoughts?
Yes. So where was I did have a thought on that. I'm just going to flitter right out of my head.
I put you on the spot. My bad.
All good. So based on this conversation, which has been fantastic, I wonder if there's like a single or maybe one or two actions that clients or viewers of this could take to get ready for when the time comes to integrate HyperFabric, or just to get started in general. Like, what's the one or two things in the scope of this conversation?
It's going to sound almost cliche. Understand the problem you're trying to solve. Scientific method is based on defining the problem first. And very often we put the solution ahead of the problem. Customers, and we help them define that, guide them down that path, but they should understand the problem they're trying to solve. Not, I need to have an AI to solve it. If your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Fortunately, we have enough variety now that we have like a large toolbox we can work with.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. I think we need to show up and work with our customers together. So like Cisco, WWT, NVIDIA, et cetera, and help customers define and build use cases. To your point, don't start solutioning, you need 25,000 GPUs. It's probably not what you need. You probably need something smaller than that, and helping them where to start. And that's why I'm a big believer in the AI toolkit, because that gives them a starting point. Like, where do I start? Mr. Customer, you can start right here. And what we're doing is we're taking those CVDs, the Cisco Validated Design that's running in the AI ATC. We're going to be offering, right after Cisco Live, a single SKU. So it'll be a single SKU for the compute, network, storage, the management, the day two operations and visibility of laying down the network, the compute, and the storage, in a single SKU. So if you see value in that, via the AI ATC, a single SKU to go ahead and order a kit and start instantiating that demo or that workload or that use case for you in real time in their environment.
I also just remember what I was going to say back to you there.
Please.
So it's in regards, there's a couple of different things. One is, we're right-sizing the solutions, yes, but it helps to understand where we're going. And there's the economics of this do figure in prominently. So if you project out, what is a network going to look like, an AI-based network going to look like in a year and a half? It's not going to look like what we have today. It'll probably be a spine leaf, super spine environment, running all Ethernet, with one of those spine leafs being tuned for the highest performance possible. But the quirk of high performance is it becomes medium and ho-hum very quickly. A year to 2 years later, you've depreciated it down to the point where 400 gig is great now, then we have 800, then we have 1.6 terabit, and then it's going to go on and on and on. Be aware and mindful that what you're investing in should have a reuse. It should be not just we invested it, depreciated, and threw it away. You're going to need to roll that cycle in. And that's part of the logistics engine that we also look at, because it's going to be forklift upgrades, rolling upgrades of what was very fast today becomes the standard file compute solutions for the rest of the data center. You're not going to be able to do that on an InfiniBand architecture, for example. That's going to be still optimized just for that high speed. How do you upgrade it without wasting money?
If I can just make one more point on that, you hit on something that's pretty important. So I mentioned the investment protection, like GPU technology rolls in and out, like the investment protection, slide a new thing in. If you're going to be not having that investment protection, you have to look at the physical environments of these data centers in the power, the heating, cooling, how are you cabling the stuff up? Like, there's a whole environmental thing. How much power you can get in a rack, and then physics, what does it take to cool it, and what's that threshold? Because you can't cool like
first
too
build
much.
a nuclear reactor, put it next
to the data center.
That's pretty. But yeah, that's right. That's kind of how it works. And that is like, if I had to wrap it up with how to help customers prepare. When somebody asks me talk to me about AI, my first question back to them is, tell me about your data center strategy. And when somebody tells me about a data center strategy, it's like, what is your AI strategy? They're being treated sometimes in error as two parallel investments. No, this is the same thing. They have to be conflated and treated as a single unified whole. If you can peel them off, fine, but realistically, you're going to plan these as one environment. Stop complicating it by trying to make it two.
And then one last thought.
You keep on saying that.
Because there's a lot to unpack here, right? So we talked about leveraging customers' data, right? They're going to have data sets in their data as part of this model in these use cases. Security is also front and center on PII data, data sovereignty. Do I start in the cloud? Do I come on-prem? These are also conversations we're having, cost, price, performance that you mentioned. These are all economics that we need to have consultative conversations with our customers and guide them down the right path.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, gentlemen, that was a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm sure it's a super busy schedule this week to take time to
thank you for having me, Brian.
talk about this. And thank you for joining today and watching. If you'd like to have any more information about WWT and Cisco's partnership, we have loads of great content on WWT.com related to what we've talked about here today, and scores of other information in different technology areas. So check that out, and we'll see you next time.